But first tonight, to our exclusive revelation that visas to Palestinians have been approved without any manual security checks at all. Concerned security insiders told me today that visitor visas have been approved for Gazans in an automated process. This has left intelligence agencies later scrambling to ensure that none pose a risk to national security. This shocking revelation comes as figures show Australia is taking more Palestinians from Gaza than almost anywhere in the developed world, and far more than surrounding Islamic countries. Yet the Albanese government's security process is weaker than other nations. Data shows Australia has issued visas to 2,922 Palestinians. 1,500 are already in the country. By contrast, Japan, Sweden, Switzerland, Norway and Spain were among 35 countries not to take in any Palestinians since October 7. Of our Five Eyes allies, the US accepted only 17, 168 to the UK, 27 to New Zealand and 41 to Canada. Neighbouring Iraq, Syria and Saudi Arabia have taken in none, according to data compiled by the coalition. And Spain is fascinating. It's one of the leading pro-Palestinian countries politically. It's already recognised Palestine as an independent country. Yet it's taken in no Palestinians since October 7. And there's a reason: the intense security risk. It's something the powerful chair of the United States Congressional Foreign Affairs Committee spoke to me about on Thursday. Michael McCall said that Hamas sympathisers could be ticking time bombs.
You have to properly vet individuals before you bring them in to your country. Otherwise, you could be bringing in, ticking time bombs, Hamas or other terrorists that could cause problems.
Now, these Gazans were given visitor visas, as Ed Husick said, because it's faster. Well, insiders told me today that the visitor visa process is clunky and out of date. It involves an online questionnaire where an electronic assessment classifies people into different risk categories. There would be a ping and alert if a person's name hits a watch list, an Interpol red notice, or Australia's movement alert list. But unless someone's name is flagged on a watch list, then they're not referred for a manual security assessment. No manual checks. I'm told there's a bias in the system to grant the visa because these visas are usually for people visiting family members, not for people coming from a terrorist hotspot. If there's no red flag based on someone's name or their own answers to the online questionnaire, then the visa is automatically granted. And this can happen, as we know, in as little as 1 hour. Now, I asked Home Affairs about this today. They said they couldn't respond to my questions until tomorrow, and I'll bring you their answers if I have them tomorrow night. But we know that a visa was granted in just 1 hour after an online application filled out by this man, Ayman Dlan, for his mother. And as you know, DFAT officials have admitted that visas are coming through in 1 hour.
So if you look globally, a very large number of our visitor visas would be done inside an hour.
This follows the admission by the ASIO Director General Mike Burgess that security checks for Palestinians were only done if certain triggers were established. And that was the line that the Prime Minister misquoted and misled Australians over. Now, it's actually a fraudulent use of the visa system to give Gazans visitor visas. Are they here on a holiday? Well, no, because Tony Burke, the minister, has said that he's not going to send anyone back to Gaza. The coalition hounded the Albanese government in Parliament again today about why our security process is weaker than other countries.
Today it was reported that before approving visas for people coming from the terrorist-controlled Gaza war zone, Canada requires applicants to submit to face-to-face interviews and biometric testing in a third country, Egypt. Why didn't the government have a similar arrangement in place before granting more than 2,900 tourist visas?
Well, in response, the Prime Minister says not all Palestinians support Hamas.
People from Gaza or the West Bank, for that matter, are certainly not automatically Hamas supporters and shouldn't be seen as being so.
And that's right. Of course, not all Palestinians support Hamas, but many do. The government itself has rejected more than 7,000 visa applications from Gaza on security grounds. And there were many civilians who took part alongside Hamas in the October 7 attacks. And other civilians went in and looted homes, stepping over children and families still lying there warm and bleeding. Civilians also celebrated on the streets of Gaza as bloodied Israeli bodies were paraded around and hostages dragged in. But Albanese is right, not all Palestinians support Hamas. And here's the point. What is he doing to ensure that Hamas sympathisers, or worse, actual Hamas members, aren't coming to Australia? Automated visitor visas are not the answer. Security checks that take as little as 1 hour without any manual assessment is certainly not going to sort through those posing a risk from the refugees. Well, Peter Dutton asked today if there was a third country where security assessments were being completed.
Processing a visa application while somebody is offshore in a third country like Jordan means a person of concern can be stopped before getting to Australia. The last government used this process when bringing people in from Syria. The Prime Minister says the process for granting 2,900 tourist visas to those coming from the terrorist-controlled Gaza zone followed the same process. Can the Prime Minister advise in which third-party country these people were sent to for screening before they came to Australia?
Of course, there's not. Now, Dan Tian, who will be on my show a bit later, he asked 5 times how many of the 2,900 visas from Gaza have been cancelled. 5 times. The Prime Minister wouldn't answer and instead attacked the coalition for asking questions about this instead of other topics.
They could have asked a question about cost of living, could have asked a question about, about the visit of the President-elect of Indonesia.
Prime Minister.
Doesn't he think national security is important to worry about? It's so utterly confusing to see this lack of regard for our safety, for our children's safety. It's so utterly confusing that the Albanese government and even ASIO think it's okay for people to come here who support Hamas, because Mike Burgess has said as much.
If it's just rhetorical support and they don't have an ideology or support for a violent extremism ideology, then that's not a problem.
Well, Foreign Affairs editor Greg Sheridan said today that in his 45 years of journalism, he can't recall any minister or official saying that it was okay to rhetorically support a terror group, let alone someone who was seeking to come to Australia. Greg Sheridan asks, is it okay to give verbal support to Al-Qaeda or Islamic State or even the Ku Klux Klan? He says Hamas is not only a terrorist organisation, its charter contains the most foul and vicious traditional anti-Semitism. He says the government must clarify what it means to say some degree of support for Hamas is no problem. He says the opposition would be failing its duty to the nation to leave this matter unresolved. And it is a good point. Is the Prime Minister not concerned that he's bringing people potentially to our country who hate Jews? Doesn't this change Australia's social fabric? It seems the Prime Minister has quickly forgotten the barbarities inflicted by Hamas on October 7. He must have forgotten, or perhaps he doesn't care, because as the data shows, Australia is taking in a near record number of Palestinians from Gaza without any adequate security checks.